And hello, everyone. Welcome to show number 68 of This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing. I'm your host, Loren Gray, where I might be flying a little solo today, but for all good reasons. It's holidays, and we can't expect everybody to be available all the time, but I certainly appreciate when they are. So we are going to have fun. It will be a little bit shorter than normal because I don't want you just to think that you have to hear me talking the entire time. But let me give you a little bit of a recap of what we're going to be talking about today. When it comes to tools, I would like to talk a little bit about a new app that came out from Google called photoscan. Now, why do we need another photo app? Well, we'll talk about that in just a second. Also, I would like to talk about a platform that has had some interest in it, which is called Causley.com. And it's an interesting way of generating traffic, much similar to what Edward St. Ange has mentioned as to the value proposition of friends and family, being the real guiding influence of people engaging with your content on social media such as Facebook. A lot of Airbnb today. Matter of fact, 3 different articles about Airbnb. Their launch of a magazine, their launch of their Magic platform, and also of their, where are we here? Well, we'll get to it as soon as I flip over to the tab to it. Another interesting point to it is in a bit of a breaking news, CTrip, China's largest travel platform, just acquired or will be acquiring Skyscanner, which is a meta search platform that was on the rise, for $1.74 billion. And what's the real impact of that's going to happen to in the world of hospitality? What does that mean for everybody now that Skyscanner will be opened by CTrip? So that and a whole much more. We also have an interesting snapshot of the Canadian traveler, UK's Brexit strategy as to what they're anticipating doing and what they don't anticipate doing. And then Marriott making the statement is the latest in the travel brands to launch its own startup accelerator. So a few things to discuss today. Let's first over and talk about the CTrip. Now, CTrip, for those who are unaware, is the largest travel platform in China, second largest in the world, actually. Now, why would that make any difference for us that are not in the China market? Because we know China is a very closed market when it comes to how they handle their internal travel. It acquired Skyscanner, which at the time it just entered into the real meta search space because they just started including hotels in addition. They were very well known for their flight meta search, where you could go over and book a tremendous amount of flight information via meta search on it. And instead that it went into hotels, car rentals. So it truly turned into a meta search platform. Now, we have talked about meta search many times before on the show. And we talked about meta search players in the space. And one of the compliments we gave Skyscanner was that it was one of the most affordable meta search platforms when it came to click-through rates. Even though the traffic was substantially lower than what you would find on other meta search platforms, it had an excellent cost through acquisition. So it was a very well used platform to be economical on that. If you spent less money, you were still getting great traffic from it. So, and probably since we are a live show and there's only just one of me as I drink coffee, we'll have to pause for a moment. We can't keep it like a radio show. There we are. So what's its impact to that? Well, that means that there's now a new player, a larger player in the global space, because with the backing of CTrip and using Skyscanner as their entry into the global market, that's a big shift in the opportunities, one, for the Chinese travel market outside of China, where they would have to rely upon 9 Chinese platforms. Now, all of a sudden, China has a global platform in Skyscanner. But also, it makes it a player as to what opens the door for opportunities within China. Now, the little bits that I do know of Chinese business, having worked with one of the other meta search platform providers, is that China has a very hard requirement when it comes to what you can do in China. You have to have your offices in China. You have to have your banking in China. You have to have your servers in China, obviously, so they can control the traffic to and from them and so forth, or at least monitor it. So there's a lot of conditions associated with that. Well, this now gives CTrip an outside window for internal Chinese traffic. So it may open up the Chinese market more to global travel, and it certainly will open up the Chinese market to going out to global travel. So it should be interesting how they begin to leverage Skyscanner's connectivity via meta search and what that truly means for that process. So moving on to Airbnb. Want to talk about Airbnb launches this trips. It's a big tours and activities program that they did. Airbnb was all over the news this past week. They had 3 things that came out. This was the third one I can remember just a minute ago. And Airbnb launches trips. Now, trips, let me read a little bit of the article here to it. Today, the San Francisco-based company debuted Trips, the company's official formal foray into tours and activities, as well as places, which allows users to find highly curated, hand-picked recommendations for meetups, restaurants, events, and a destination. The company also hinted at the debut of Airbnb flights and noted that guests can eventually book car rentals, restaurant reservations, and grocery delivery services through the updated Airbnb app. Now, it seems very ambitious. And to bring this home to concept, one of the defining differences between us as hoteliers and those who are in the Airbnb inventory space that are renting their spaces out on the platform is that we were providing an army of services ancillary to just not a head in bed. Airbnb's claim to fame was that just through a single host, you felt more connected to your destinations as somebody was assisting you in your stay there. But it was limited. You had one person compared to a staff of people at a hotel. And we should never lose against just one person's hospitality versus a team of people dedicated to hospitality. But to say that now we also knew that there were services that we provided in the hotel space that were just not being offered in Airbnb. Our ability to coordinate restaurant reservations, our ability to coordinate concierge level services for those hotels that had that to help and guide people through their stay in the destination that the hotel was located in. Now, this is now an expanded aspect of Airbnb flights. Plus, if you look at it, they're also getting into more of the meta space, which, again, we have talked about many times before. That meta search in itself is not just the fact that you're aggregating multiple distribution points to a single platform so you can see comparative pricing. Meta search, the real value of it, again and again, is the connectivity that it provides between all the different platforms of opportunity for cars and flights and hotels and restaurants, because you're connecting their data services with a centralized data service so that you can do real-time reservations, you can do real-time bookings without just relying upon the fact that you still, once you've discovered like an ad that says for $199 and you click it, but there's no $199 rates anymore, you have to call or go through another booking engine to purchase something. MetaSearch allows seamless one-step integration through all of that. And that's the real value that MetaSearch has. And it looks like Airbnb is recognizing that need as well to say, rather than losing their guest once they've decided to potentially stay with an Airbnb facility, to then go off and find their flights, to then go off to another site and find their cars, to then go off to another site and find their restaurants. They're saying, no. Let's aggregate all of this. Let's create a kind of a meta platform that all of this is available in one platform. So we never have to worry about losing our guests' engagement with us through the entire process, even up to the point of local grocery services for those places that do have kitchens and they're staying for the time that they would use the kitchen for. So it even saves the fact that they have to find the local grocery store and find the local affordable grocery store. They're looking like they're going to do the grocery delivery service as well. So it would turn into, as they say, a super brand of travel by combining these into a single travel platform. Also on the show, we've discussed before Apple TV. I was impressed with the fact that when Apple TV's new generation of Apple TV came out, one of the first providers of an app on it, which was the big transition point for Apple TV, is that Apple TV allowed apps, much like their phone did. And I thought that was a transitional point for Apple TV, was Airbnb. And they offered an Airbnb app. And when I got it and I was going through it, it really wasn't about selling you an Airbnb room. That was the ultimate goal. It was allowing you to discover the destinations that Airbnb had inventory in. And through that discovery, your desire to go there, very top of the funnel concept. And then through that, they would make an inventory in that market available to you once you began to feel like this was something you were interested in as a destination. One of the things I thought was limiting to it was that it was only, they could entice you to come to a destination, and they can certainly entice you to stay at one of their locations. But after that, they couldn't provide any more services. Well, it sounds like they're addressing that now by saying, no, we're going to expand our services to include all of the other things we weren't doing before, between flights potentially, restaurant reservations, the grocery delivery service, meetups, events. I mean, sure, there's probably going to be ticketing that goes through that as well. So there's an integration process that if they discover it on Apple TV, it gets into the Airbnb app and you walk out the door and your itinerary is there. Again, it goes back to that concept of single service, the personal assistant that Google and Apple and everybody else is striving to be. So that was one of Airbnb's announcements. Another Airbnb announcement was the Airbnb magazine. Now, you may think, whoa, wait a minute. A bit of a step backwards. The magazine, well, they combined with Hertz magazines, and it's, again, this is another component to what hotels offered that was not being offered in Airbnb. And it's not necessarily a travel magazine as it is a destination magazine. Their first launch was in Los Angeles, where they were having their conference for Airbnb, and they kind of did a mini Oprah where they had it underneath the chairs and people went over and grabbed it, and ta-da! And it was really more of a travel guide for Los Angeles. And it was for all of their Los Angeles Airbnb hosts to now make it as a coffee table magazine. Now, if you've ever stayed at Airbnb, or if you've ever hosted anybody, when they're coming to it, you try to gather all the local interest information, the magazines of where to go and what to do and so forth. And heck, even newspapers point, 100 places to bring out of towners and things like that. You try to get all that stuff together and make it available to your guests so that they can sort through, go through, and see what it is that they might be interested in doing that they didn't discover before they got there. In our hotels, we have that as in-room guides. Now, it goes beyond just the guides of where the fire extinguishers and the restaurant menus are, but also the local information, the magazines that are shared in your rooms as to what to do and discover to all of your local merchants. And we've monetized that by saying, people have to pay to be having their business in there and so forth. Or we have companies come in and they do that for us, and they get to use our name in vain and sell space in the magazine and put this really nice glossy magazine together that people use when they get on site. Well, that was a missing component of Airbnb. Now it seems that that's not, that they're going to start doing this in their large destination markets first, and have a magazine that really is a travel guide and will teach people and educate people as they stay in the Airbnb inventories, what to do when they're in the city, how to discover the city, in addition to what Oliver the app is doing. So you can imagine the collaborative content between the magazine and also the online app, as well as the Apple TV app, as well as the website. All that integration of content will be turned into much more value. Plus, also, it'll improve their searchability and discoverability, because they will turn into more of an authority on destinations, much like the Expedias and the hotels.com of the world are, with all the content that they have in relationship to destinations as well. So interesting move that Airbnb is. And now for the third Airbnb conversation of today, and that is that there's a new product that they have. Let me read this out for you. It's called Magical Trips. Okay. This is from the Skift article. All these links, by the way, are in our show notes, which you'll find always on the website after the show. For those joining us on Facebook Live, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. There you'll see the link of the show itself and the link to the show notes, which we break down minute by minute, and with the links associated with the content we talked about today. So just what are Magical Trips? Well, the details aren't quite completely out yet. But what they're saying is will consist of peer-to-peer like tours and activities. It'll also be partnering with local activity providers and communities who will provide unique experiences, but they may themselves not be exactly full traditional tour operators. Now, as we know, when you go to a city and you're going to participate in a unique experience of that city, usually it's a tour operator that's running that, like Segway Tours of New York, or Discovery guides and so forth are usually those people that are tour operators. Well, they're actually saying that they're going to take the Airbnb community idea and allow people that may not be the traditional tour operators be helpful local guides, similar to that app that allows you to have dinner with people that aren't in restaurants, that they just invite people over to the home to have dinner. You pay for the food. They tell the price and they show the menu, and you can book a reservation. You can go over to somebody's house. Sometimes it's just a couple of people. Sometimes there's a lot more people, and you have dinner there. Well, it's that personal experience that they're looking for. And Airbnb seems to be harboring on that as well with this magic program they have that is going to allow people that are not traditional tour operators to potentially get in that game as well and offer local experiences that may be more interesting than the ones that are kind of pre-planned and homogenized. So it definitely is a signal that Airbnb doesn't want to be an accommodations provider anymore, just an accommodations provider anymore. It's again going back to the goal of being a super brand for travel, where they're defining an experience, helping you discover an experience with their platforms. They're offering through now their ability to offer potential flights and cars and restaurant reservations and grocery services and so forth. All of these things that add to the completeness of your travel experience, all in one location. And now with this Magical Trips, they're expanding that into allowing for unique curated tours and activities within the destinations you're choosing. So lots of movement from Airbnb, making a magazine, making the Magical Trips. making the platform larger with all these live there products that they're just doing there, launching with all the restaurants and so forth. So that's it for Airbnb. I know a little bit of an overkill on Airbnb, but worth the review for it. Now, a snapshot of the Canadian traveler. This is something that came through Expedia.com. It was interesting. It's kind of like an infograph. Let me go over and share the screen with us for just a moment. And sorry for the echo there, but we'll do this. There we are. So the Canadian traveler. Okay. What was interesting in this stat, and this was pointed out by a friend of mine, was the stat right up here. Who are they traveling with? 80% travel with a companion. So 80% of the Canadian traveler is with a companion. 56% travel with a spouse or significant other. 19% travel alone. So out of 80% travel with a companion, 56% travel with spouse or significant other. So there's a lot of co-business travel. Now, how does that potentially impact things? Well, I do have to say, from having clients in Canada and having spent a lot of time in Canada, lots of friends in Canada, been to Canada a lot of times, my family's from Canada, parts of my family are, that I do notice that when in the business world of traveling in Canada, that if you're going to make a trip to one of the other places in Canada, business-wise, you often don't travel alone. You usually have a compatriot that does travel with you for the presentation, for a show of force, whatever have you. Which I thought was very interesting. Now, this goes, of course, beyond just Canadian travelers within Canada, but I thought it was a unique twist when I was talking about travelers, that they do travel with a companion, but not always with their spouse or significant other, is because they do have a lot of business travel that also dictates that they have co-workers traveling with them. All right. Now, some of the interesting, of course, top destinations booked: Florida, no surprise; Mexico, no surprise; Toronto, I thought was interesting. Only from the perspective, it's such a major metropolitan area, and it is probably the most metropolitan type city in Canada. And I'm being a personal opinion when I say that, because you look at Vancouver. Vancouver's amazing and beautiful. It's also in these beautiful mountains and waters and so forth. Montreal is very European feeling. So Toronto really has left the burden, if you want to call it that, of being the largest metropolitan-esque type of city that has its own, vibrant city feel to it. So I can see where it would be a destination within the Canadian structure. Cuba has always been there, which is always interesting. And then, of course, you have Vancouver, because of its temperate weather, it makes it for a great destination. Why is all these things important and interesting? Because as we blend more and more of the travel between countries, the same reason why CTrip's buying Skyscanner is important is because as more and more cultures and peoples are made available to other platforms that allow other destinations for them to be choosing and going to, it influences our market strategy on the international market of what we're doing for different international markets to garner the business that may be relevant, and what platforms we should be on when that comes to our marketing and our efforts and our strategies as to what ones we should have for that. So let me flip back. Sorry for this again. Here we go. And we go back to the screen. So there we are for the Canadian traveler. Now, the other newsworthy item was the UK's Brexit strategy should terrify the travel industry, but it doesn't. What they're really talking about is that there is kind of a revibrance of interest in the British market, because they had to lower their prices because of this impending problems and so forth, and where the travel agency should have been up in arms, because there is such a collaboration of travel between the European continent and England, that there should have been this big pushback of, oh my gosh, we're going to lose so much, because now we're going to make them travel through hoops. They have to use passports again. There's going to be tariffs and so forth that weren't existing before. There was already a currency exchange issue because of the fact that the British never let go of their pounds compared to the EU's, the euros. So that didn't really much change. And that's kind of where it leads to this, is that as it settles into the reality that Brexit is real, it's really happening. A lot of the hoteliers look at the fact that it changes tax strategy, it changes market strategy. It's kind of a pressure release valve as to pricing structures, because the cost factors associated with things that are going to be shifting and changing. So a lot of the resistance that should have happened, or at least the panic that should have happened, didn't. They also went over and talked about fly and flops, where the airports and so forth. There's a lot of affordable air like Ryanair and EasyJet that run back and forth. That it seems like they're expanding their network to not be so much of an impact for it, that it really isn't going to be as bad as they thought in the sense of lost business, because there's still the need for travel. And even though that the functionalities have changed, whether, like I said, passports and so forth have changed, in real essence, the airlines and so forth are already infrastructure. They're already there. So if this had happened before these airlines had created their network of connectivity from the mainland to the island, then this may have been prohibited. But the fact that they already exist only means that they have to adjust their taxations and their security issues associated with the travel process, which, as it is, that's going to be a pain in the butt anyway, but not as business destructive as people had originally first thought. So interesting that they had diminished the real forward impact of that. Anyway, last news article for this before we get into tools and a platform, and that is the Marriott is the latest travel brand to launch its own startup accelerator. What is a startup accelerator? Well, Marriott being the big brand in the world now, rather than waiting for the industry or for creativity to catch up and then them adopting it or incorporating it or purchasing it, what they're doing is they're really beginning to feed the system. They're creating now their own accelerator or incubators, if you would refer to them that way, of helping promote and develop tools and business models and softwares and platforms and services that they can use because they incubated them. They created them within this ability for people to be rewarded for their efforts of creativity. So they're trying this process of allowing these people to have a creative source, a creative space in which they can build these things. For those who are not in the technical world, there's like hackathons, and we always think of hacking as a bad thing, but hacking is really tearing down a method of doing something and building it differently or finding a way to do something different with it. That's not always a bad thing. It's been used as a bad thing, and it certainly has been referred to as a bad thing. But in the terminology of the industry, hacking is really restructuring so that you're not just relying upon the old method of doing something. You're looking at always new and creative ways of doing something. So Marriott's decided to build this accelerator program that allows these startups a safe space and financial support and workspace and material space to begin to develop some programs that have some potential success and value that Marriott could then incorporate and use in future tense. It's a smart move. It takes, of course, a massively sized company to build accelerators and incubator programs, because you're really not getting a ROI benefit from it. It's like the research and development phase. It's like a halfway point. Instead of having an R&D office where there's dedicated overheads, the incubator is based upon people coming to you with ideas that are merited, and then the cost comes from deciding that it's merited and that something needs to be done. So it is kind of a not having to have an R&D department, but it is creating an R&D department based on the creativity that's brought to it. So it's a very smart move on Marriott to have that. It means that in the nearer future, not the farther future, but the nearer future, we will have different aspects of Marriott's softwares and service solutions programs begin to be added in, because this accelerator program will start developing things that will be adopted by Marriott and used efficiently to improve their relationships and their interfaces with their consumers. So that was pretty much all the news pieces. Again, as a recap, we have CTrip having purchased Skyscanner, which is a meta search engine, which will have an interesting play. The whole thing should be done by the end of the year, prior to next year. So we should see the impact of what that means next year as it begins to roll through. Airbnb created big tours and activities, which is their incorporation of additional value propositions to their service providing of just accommodations at this point. Airbnb also created their new magazine, which is, again, filling a gap of what hotels have traditionally done for their own guests. But now Airbnb has a resource for a destination guide that they themselves have curated that will be an integration to all of their programs of their apps and their website and everything else. So there'll be a larger value proposition to it. And then, of course, the Airbnb also went over and has a massive new product called Magic Trips, which is incorporating all of the local tour operators or potential tour operators and creating more of a personalized experience and adding yet more service value to why Airbnb would be a one-stop location for people to decide where to go, where to stay, what to do, how to get there, and what to do while you're there. all on one platform without them having to step out and go to different websites after they're done with the Airbnb purchase. We did also discuss the Canadian traveler, their statistics, and what it is that they ways to be insightful to what those markets represent to potentially our businesses. And it doesn't have to be that you have that you're a Florida or market only. There's a lot of border traffic between the two, and there's always city businesses that go through. Being aware of how Canadian travelers, as any country, the habits of those particular travels, how do they garner their travel decisions? What platforms do they use? What is their booking windows in comparison? Everybody has different ways of doing things, and being more familiar with how each, if we can, look at them either culturally or as a country or as a region, but knowing better how to read that kind of data only helps us be better at targeting and being more relevant for our messaging to that market. The other is that the Brexit impact was not as stressfully pushed back from the travel market as it was originally thought it would be. We discussed that. We also discussed that Marriott created its own startup accelerator program, which will only expand new products and services coming to the Marriott ecosystem as time moves forward, and that begins to bear fruit. So the other things I'd like to talk about is an app and tools. The app is called Photoscan. It's a new app that Google just released. And it's interesting because gosh knows there's 1,001 photo apps out there for if an iPhone or an Android or whatever it is. So why would you need another one? I have, and we've reviewed on this show before, Google allows for the 360 Google Streets View that you can do 360s of wherever you're at and have it added to Google Maps, and you can get tens of thousands. I have one picture that was with me in Sydney down by the Opera House, and it has almost 500,000 people that have seen that picture. I have had pictures out on the beach in front of a resort of a client friend of mine that has had 100,000 people view it. It allows people to see in 360 your location, which is all good. That's not this app. This app is for all the times that you have old images that you go to try to take a picture of to save it, to digitize it. Okay. We used to have scanners and so forth. Maybe you still use a scanner, but whenever you take a picture of a picture, you have shadow, you have glare, you have bad lighting, whatever it is. Because unless you have a studio that has 3 key lightings that can put onto it so that there is no shadows and the camera's behind the lighting so it doesn't cast a shadow, and it's not a glossy old picture that will create a glare that you then can post edit and take it out, it's a real pain in the butt. So this app allows for you to take a picture of a picture, and then it will reorient the camera for you, where you have to line up the dots, much like the Google Street View makes you line up dots to take a spherical picture. And it takes 4 more pictures of the same picture for you as you do this. And what it does is it blends it all together, stitches it all together. So if there was a glare, it takes the picture that doesn't have the glare. If there's a shadow, it takes the picture that doesn't have the shadow. And it creates the ability to take pictures of old pictures, glossy or not, that look like the original picture was. Now, business-wise, why is that good? Well, if you've ever worked in an old hotel or have been in a hotel that has history, there's a tremendous amount of collateral and images and things that you wish you could use that are not digitized, and that you would love to be able to create an album or a historical book or keeper of the brand secrets. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about hotels that have history and culture. There's going back to Canada. There's some hotels that have beautiful history and beautiful culture to them, and a lot of their history was in the old format of beautiful pictures and things that you want to digitize, but again, unless you have a scanner and you're going to go through this whole process, or you have a great photo system that can create the key lights and all this stuff for it, you really just want to be able to get them and use them. I use this app to give you a more specific example of this. An older hotel had a lot of pictures of what it was like back in the day, and a lot of images of people that were there back in the day. And we want to put a montage together of all those pictures. And I don't know if you're an iBooks fan or not, but it's a free app to build iBooks. And so we took these pictures and took the content and curated it and put the pictures in there and put this into a wonderful little iBook that we gave us to our guests, that this is the history of where you just stayed at, this history of where you're going to be staying at, as a free token, just saying, hey, so you really know where it is, gave some value propositions to, you're coming where lots of people come before, and this is what it used to look like before, and this is what the lobby used to look like before, and so forth. And it really connected people to the history of the hotel in a way that made them feel like, as they're walking in, people were looking like, oh, man, you know, this, and they look at this, and they could actually see the hotel different than it was back to where it was from the old pictures. It was just adding a little bit more depth, like I'd like to call it the story of the hotel. Every hotel has a story, and it's just not because it's in its location in the corner of such and such and such and such. But every hotel has a story, including limited services on the side of the road between the corner of such and such and such and such. It was built for a reason. They're there for a reason. So you have to find what your story is for your hotel. And that content is what makes the content endearing to a potential guest or customer. Yes, if you're driving between point A and point B, and there's a hotel that's halfway down the middle, you're going to pick it for location and how much does it cost you to stay there. But there's still a differentiating difference of knowing whether or not you're staying at a hotel that wants to give you good service versus a hotel that's just providing a service. And that's where, again, your story can come in. So there's never a point where your story isn't valuable. And this app allows you to create that story. It allows you to take all these old things and put them in digital format without an expense of having to hire somebody or to buy a scanner and go through all this process. And it gives you some creativity license to be able to use it. So if you're interested in the app, it's kind of fun. It's called Google Photoscan. It's a free app, of course. Google does that. Download it and play with it. And I'd love to hear your feedback. Send me an email if you think that it was useful for what I described it, or you found another use for it. I'd love to find out if somebody used it in another creative way. So if you do use the app for whatever reason for your hotel and you find value to it, please send me an email at live@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com, and I will air your story or ask you to come on the show and tell us a little bit about what you did with it. So there's the app for today. Now, there's one other platform I would like for you all to take a look at. Haven't used it yet, about ready to launch it, but it has an interesting merit to it. It's called Causely. Now, Edward St. Ange with Folk2 has been very good about giving us statistics of what's happening in the social market in the sense of relevancy, and from a business page point of view, our ability to show up in people's dialogue and content. Now, we know that, again, going back to old statistics, there's 1,500 things that could be on your newsfeed at any one time. Facebook decides what 300 of those are going to be. 85% of those are related to what your friends and family are either liking, sharing, or doing. Then there is a remaining residual that's associated with high profile, relevant topic stuff, news feeds and so forth, that have enough engagement and enough relevancy that they show up in your newsfeed as well. And then whatever scraps are left over from that is what business pages still can show up for. And his prediction was by the end of this year, which is only 5 weeks away, that unless you have at least 20,000 followers and a high relevancy score with your posts, most of what you would be doing on your business page would simply just not show up anywhere. And with that in mind, all your efforts for social, unless you paid in social, would not show up. So this company decided to put two great things together. And this kind of comes off of something that I had done, but not to the scale, for hotels, where we decided to find who were the local charity organizations within the city. And we asked, is like, look, we would like to create a charity relationship with you for an X period of time or a special event or what have you. Everybody that you send to us, we will make a donation to your organization for those people. And we'd create either a coding or a statement or something they would have to do to validate that they were coming from that particular platform. So in other words, all of the followers of their charity group on their social platform of Facebook would see whatever we wanted to tell them as a support idea. Say, come into our restaurant, and whenever you buy dinner, we buy dinner for a homeless family, something like that. And so now this audience, and we made sure that we were picking places, one, that we believed in, two, we knew they were relevant to the audience that we would want into our restaurant as well, because we want to make sure that we're connecting with people that would want to do these things. And so it was very successful. It was a means of getting engagement from people by sharing and giving to local charities. Well, this Causely, Causely, is creating that into a platform that you pay for. And what it is they provide you the collateral that identifies you as doing this, the ability to connect to what you're doing, what you're giving your cause information for, as a way of when people check into your business. Because that's the real effect that you're going to have, is if you can get people to check into your business, that means all of their friends and family, that 85% of the traffic that is being shown up on people's news feeds, you're now in that news feed prioritization, where instead of fighting it from the outside as a business page, you're fighting it from the inside as something that was shared by friends and family as a check-in. And for those who check in, it supports whatever charity identification has been created, and they know this. So then it turns into a very exponential growth of people following your company or checking into your company, because then they know that they're helping a cause that they believe in or they want to help with. And so it really gets you to shift where your traffic flow on social is going from just a business page posting or pay for service into the realm of family and friends posting and sharing their check-ins. So take a look at it, Causley, CAUSLEY.com. When it comes to the pricing of it, to give you some senses, and I'm reaching out to them to see if somebody wants to get on the show with us to give us more details as to what's going on. Their initial program, their starter program up to 300 donations is $140 a month. And it gives you the printed materials, the Instagram insights, Facebook insights, digital product, curated cause section, lots of stuff you can see there. And then it goes up from there. You can go much farther and larger with them as well. Interesting idea, interesting concept, especially considering what Edward St. Onge points out to as the diminishment of business page free traffic and only being a paid for traffic program for it. So that is our show for today. I know that I was kind of solo on this, not a problem, which also makes it a little bit shorter. So we covered our news items, we covered our tool items, we covered our new progressive platform item. From a process point of view for it, we wanted to let everybody know we are looking forward to next week's show. Much excited for the fact that we're going to have Alex from Alice on our show. Now, as you have known from our previous shows, who follow, that Alice is a guest engagement platform. And it was a hot topic, and has been and continue to be. It seems as if people are realizing that there's been a gap in this customer journey discussion that we've been having now for the better part of 2 years, where we're all about acquisition and we're all about pre-stay, but we do very little during the stay of engagement with our guests to really promote and cultivate the loyalty that we hope we can generate by good service for them to return again, should we be an option for them as a destination. And so now there seems to be a high focus on the 2017 budgeting program. I get asked by clients a lot as well. And what are the best guest service platforms that are out there? And there's a variety of ways that they're handled. Some require their own platform, which is, in my mind, a negative. Some use the existing platforms, which is, in my mind, a positive. But it's what you do with it and the commitment you need to make to it that really is the defining difference. So as we talked around all of these different platforms, Alice was one of the ones that were in there. And we had a connection with Alex, who is one of the founders of it. And he agreed to come on our show and spend time with us to discuss what it is that makes Alice unique, who is best to use it, who may not be their prime customer, and what's the real benefit of this now in process engagement with a guest when they're at your property, and how does Alice solve that? So we're expecting a very lively conversation. We'll have all the hosts back with us that week. Because we'll get the chance to spend time with Alex on it. He also gets to join us for whatever portions of the news reviews that he would like, and any other insights that he might have. So that's next Friday, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern, 8:30 Pacific time, where we will have Alex from Alice on our show here at This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing, and that will be show number 69. Now, as with anything, all of our shows, you can find this show and all of our previous shows at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. That is our archive. That will also have all of our show notes and all of the links to the discussions and news articles that we had given today. Now, if this is your first time listening, please, if you enjoyed it, send me a note to live@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. If you have questions, interest in topics, or would like to join our show, please also send me a note at live@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. There is a podcast we do also after this show that is a recap to this show. And we also discuss in some more detail some of the additional tools that we don't often get to in this show. In this case, we did pretty much talk about the tool that we wanted to today. So the podcast will be a decent echo of what this show is. But we do provide that every Friday as well, in case you can't spend the time to watch a video show live, but can prefer to listen to it on your commute to work. And that you can find at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com /podcast. And from there, you can subscribe. We are on every major platform, from iTunes to Google Play to Stitcher to SoundCloud, all of the different podcasting platforms, should you have a preference of using them. If you do listen to our podcast or have been a subscriber of our podcast, we have a little over 400 people that do that. Then please, if you haven't already given us a review on the show, go onto the platform of your choice and make sure that you review us. That allows others to discover us, and also give us feedback as to what you like or don't like. And for that end, if you have any subjects or topics you would like to include on those shows, or any feedback or information, you can send me an email via podcast@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com. So with that, I have to tell you that this is pretty much our show. It is rare for me to go solo, but it was kind of fun to be able to kind of hit all the news items. I do miss my compatriots in conversation, but I completely appreciate the fact that this is Black Friday after Thanksgiving, which I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving, and thankfulness for family, friends, and a safe holiday, and that it begins our holiday season, our kickoff. So if you're out shopping, please be safe about it. And we will look forward to seeing you and hearing from you for next Friday's show of This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing, show number 69 next week. Until then, my name is Loren Gray. You can reach out to me at Loren@hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com for any comments or suggestions you may have as well. And I am thankful that you listened to this show, and we look forward to you joining us on the next show. And with that, I say have a great day.